The car door slammed shut behind Laura with a sound that felt too final. The leather seat was warmer than it should have been, the interior darker, and the man in the driver's seat wasn't Michael. "You're not my Uber," Laura said, her hand already reaching for the door handle. Click. The locks engaged with a mechanical precision that sent ice through her veins. The man turned slowly, and Laura's breath caught. He was older than she expected, maybe early 40s, with silver threading through dark hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen things normal people couldn't imagine. His suit probably cost more than her rent. Everything about him screamed money and danger in equal measure. "No," he said, his voice low and controlled. "I'm not." Laura's heart hammered against her ribs. Christmas lights blurred past the window as the car began to move. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Not on Christmas Eve. Not when she was supposed to be heading to her sister's place for dinner. "Stop the car," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Stop the car right now or I'm calling the police." "Don't bother," Frank said without emotion. "They can't help you. Before you find out what happens next, hit that subscribe button because this story is going to take you on a ride you won't forget. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends." Laura's phone was in her hand, but her fingers felt numb. She looked at the man again, really looked at him. There was something calculated in the way he sat, the way he breathed, like every movement was a decision. This wasn't some random creep. This was something else entirely. "I got in the wrong car," Laura said, forcing herself to think clearly. "This is a mistake. Just let me out at the next light and we'll both forget this happened." Frank's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You got in my car. Your car was parked in the Uber pickup zone. I don't take Ubers." "Then why were you parked there?" For the first time, something flickered across his face. Annoyance maybe, or surprise. "I was waiting for someone." "Well, I'm not her. So please, just stop the car." Frank's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The city lights played across his face, making him look even more severe. "I can't do that." "What do you mean you can't?" "Just unlock the door." "You saw my face," Frank said flatly. "You're sitting in a vehicle registered to a company that doesn't officially exist. And 20 minutes ago, someone put out a hit on me. So no, I can't just let you walk away into the night where any one of my enemies might grab you to get to me." Laura's mind reeled. Hit. Enemies. Registered to a company that doesn't exist. Every word made this worse. "I don't know who you are," she said desperately. "I don't know anything about you. I'm nobody. I work at a bookstore. I'm going to my sister's house for Christmas dinner. Please." Frank glanced at her through the rearview mirror, and for a moment, something almost human crossed his features. "Frank Costello," he said. "Now you know who I am. And that makes this complicated." The name hit her like cold water. Frank Costello. She'd heard that name whispered in coffee shops, seen it in newspaper articles that used words like alleged and suspected. Frank Costello ran half the city's underground operations, or at least that's what people said. Real estate. Shipping. Things that looked legitimate on paper but everyone knew better. "Oh God," Laura whispered. "Yeah," Frank said grimly. "Oh God." The car turned down a side street Laura didn't recognize. Her phone buzzed. Her sister. She couldn't answer it. What would she even say? "Where are we going?" Laura asked, hating how small her voice sounded. "Somewhere safe." "Safe for who?" Frank's eyes met hers in the mirror again. "Both of us, if you're smart." They drove in silence for several minutes. Laura's mind raced through possibilities. She could scream. She could try to grab the wheel. She could throw herself out of the car at a red light. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the cold efficiency in Frank's voice. Maybe it was the fact that he hadn't hurt her, hadn't even threatened her really. He just seemed irritated by her existence. "I have people expecting me," Laura said finally. "My sister will call the police when I don't show up. Tell her you'll be late." "How late?" Frank didn't answer. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath a building that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. Sleek. Modern. Expensive. The kind of place where Laura wouldn't even be able to afford to look at the price sheet. The engine cut off. Frank sat still for a moment, then unlocked the doors. If you run, he said calmly, my security will stop you before you reach the exit. If you scream, no one will hear you. If you try to call for help, I'll take your phone. You have exactly 2 options right now. You can come upstairs with me and wait this out in comfort, or you can make this difficult for both of us. Laura stared at the back of his head. Those aren't options. That's a threat. It's reality. Something in his voice made her believe him. She looked around the parking garage. Cameras everywhere. 2 men in dark suits standing by the elevator, trying to look casual and failing. This wasn't a fight she could win. How long? She asked. I don't know. That's not good enough. Frank turned to look at her directly for the first time. His eyes were gray, she realized. Cold gray like winter sky. But there was something else there too. Fatigue, maybe. The kind that comes from carrying weight too long. Nothing about this is good enough, he said. But it's what we have. He got out of the car. After a moment, Laura followed. The elevator ride was silent. One of Frank's men stood behind them, expression blank. Laura watched the numbers climb. 15th floor. 20th. 30th. When they finally stopped, Frank led her down a hallway with carpeting so thick her footsteps made no sound. He unlocked a door and gestured her inside. Laura stepped into what looked like a luxury penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, Christmas lights twinkling like fallen stars. The furniture was modern and expensive. Everything was pristine, almost sterile. It looked like a showroom, not a home. Guest room is down the hall on the left, Frank said, shrugging off his jacket. Bathroom attached. There's clothes in the closet that might fit you. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen. Laura stood frozen in the entryway. You're serious. You're actually keeping me here. I'm keeping you alive. From what? Frank loosened his tie with sharp movements. From people who would use you to hurt me. From walking into the wrong situation at the wrong time. From yourself, apparently, since you have terrible judgment about which cars to get into. That's not fair. The app said a black Mercedes would be here in 2 minutes. Your black Mercedes was sitting in the pickup zone. Life's not fair. You're unbelievable. I've been called worse. Frank walked to the bar and poured himself something amber from a crystal decanter. He didn't offer her any. Laura watched him knock back the drink in one swallow, and something about the gesture made him seem almost human. Almost. I need to call my sister, she said. Frank pulled out his own phone and tossed it to her. She caught it reflexively. Put it on speaker. Are you serious? Do I look like I'm joking? Laura wanted to throw the phone at his head. Instead, she dialed. Her sister answered on the second ring. Sarah, it's me. Laura, where are you? Dinner's getting cold and Mom keeps asking about you. Laura glanced at Frank, who leaned against the bar watching her with those unreadable grey eyes. I'm so sorry. Something came up. I'm going to be really late. I might not make it at all. What? Laura, it's Christmas Eve. What could possibly be more important than family dinner? It's complicated. I can't really explain right now. Are you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine. I promise. Something work-related came up. Last-minute emergency. You know how it is. Sarah sighed dramatically. At a bookstore? On Christmas Eve? What? Did someone return a book with a threatening note? Laura tried to laugh but it came out strangled. Something like that. Well, hurry if you can. We're waiting for you to open presents. Don't wait. Go ahead without me. I'll make it up to you, I promise. You better. Mom's making that weird jello thing and I can't face it alone. I love you, Sarah. Love you too, weirdo. Call me later. I will. Laura hung up and handed the phone back to Frank. Her hands were shaking. Frank noticed but didn't comment. That wasn't so hard, he said. You have no idea what you've done, Laura said quietly. That's my family. My sister. We've never missed Christmas together. Not once since we were kids. Something flickered across Frank's face. I'm sorry. The apology shocked her more than anything else had. It sounded genuine. He looked away, pouring himself another drink. Are you going to tell me what's actually happening? Laura asked. If I'm stuck here, I deserve to know why. Frank was silent for a long moment. Then he set down his glass and met her eyes. 3 hours ago, someone leaked information about a deal I've been working on for 6 months. A legitimate deal, before you ask. Real estate development, all above board. But the leak came from inside my organization, which means I have a traitor. And when you have a traitor, you have a target on your back. So call the police. Frank's laugh was bitter. The police can't help with this. The people after me don't leave evidence. They don't follow rules. They just make problems disappear. Then go to the FBI. And tell them what? That someone in my organization, which they've been trying to investigate for years, is betraying me. They'd love that. They'd probably give whoever it is a medal. Laura sat down on the edge of an expensive-looking chair. So what's your plan? Hide here forever? No. Find out who betrayed me. Deal with them. Make sure it doesn't happen again. And I'm just collateral damage. You're an innocent bystander who got caught in the crossfire. I'm trying to keep you that way. The words hung in the air between them. Laura looked at this man, this dangerous, powerful man who held her life in his hands, and tried to see him clearly. He looked tired. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. There were lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled once, maybe, but had forgotten how. How old are you? She asked suddenly. Frank blinked. What? How old are you? 43. Why? You look older. His jaw tightened. Thank you for that observation. I didn't mean it as an insult. I meant you look like you've lived about 3 lifetimes. Frank picked up his glass again but didn't drink. Some days it feels like more. They stood in silence. Outside, snow began to fall. Laura watched it through the massive windows, each flake catching the city lights. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like she was watching the world from behind glass, trapped in someone else's life. I should show you the guest room, Frank said finally. You'll want to get comfortable. Laura followed him down the hall. The guest room was bigger than her entire apartment. King bed with white linens. Modern art on the walls. Another massive window overlooking the city. It looked like a hotel room in a 5-star hotel where Laura would never stay. Bathrooms through there, Frank said, gesturing. Towels in the closet. If you need anything, I'll be in the living room. He started to leave, then paused in the doorway. For what it's worth, he said without looking at her, I really am sorry about Christmas. Then he was gone. Laura sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself fall apart. Not sobbing, not hysterics. Just quiet tears that felt like surrender. She was stuck here with a man who terrified her, missing the one night that mattered most to her family, and there was nothing she could do about it. After a while, she got up and explored. The closet had women's clothes in various sizes, all expensive designer brands with tags still attached. It creeped her out until she realized they probably kept them here for situations exactly like this. How often did Frank Costello need to stash random women in his penthouse? She changed out of her party dress into soft leggings and a cashmere sweater that cost more than her weekly paycheck. Then she washed her face, stared at herself in the mirror, and tried to figure out who she was now. The girl who got in the wrong car. The girl stuck with the Mafia. When she emerged from the guest room, she found Frank in the kitchen. He'd changed too, trading the expensive suit for dark jeans and a simple black sweater. It made him look younger, more human. He was making coffee. Want some? He asked without turning around. Yes. Please. He poured her a mug and slid it across the granite counter. Laura wrapped her hands around it, grateful for the warmth. Do you live here alone? She asked. Yes. That's sad. Frank's expression didn't change. It's practical. Same thing sometimes. He almost smiled. Almost. You're very direct. You kidnapped me. I figure politeness is optional at this point. I didn't kidnap you. I'm protecting you. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Frank took a sip of his coffee. You're smarter than I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Hysterics. Begging. Tears. I cried in the guest room. I meant in front of me. Would it have made you let me go? No. Then what would be the point? They stared at each other across the kitchen counter. Something passed between them, some understanding that Laura couldn't quite name. He wasn't going to let her go. She wasn't going to break down. They were stuck in this together, so they might as well make the best of it. Tell me about the bookstore, Frank said suddenly. Laura blinked. What? You said you work at a bookstore. Tell me about it. It was so unexpected that Laura actually laughed. Why do you care? I don't. But we're going to be here a while and I'm tired of talking about my problems. So Laura told him. About the small independent bookstore where she'd worked for 3 years. About the owner, Mrs. Chen, who treated books like they were precious living things. About the regular customers she knew by name, the book club that met every Thursday, the children's reading hour on Saturday mornings. As she talked, she watched Frank's face. He listened with the same intensity he'd brought to everything else, like her words mattered. It sounds nice, he said when she finished. It is. It's the best job I've ever had. Why? Laura thought about it. Because people come in looking for stories. For escape, or knowledge, or comfort. And I get to help them find it. There's something beautiful about that. Connecting people with the exact book they need at the exact moment they need it. I can't remember the last time I read for pleasure, Frank said quietly. What do you read? Contracts. Financial reports. Background checks on people who might want to kill me. That's depressing. That's my life. Laura set down her coffee mug. Then your life is depressing. Frank's eyes flashed with something dangerous. For a moment, Laura thought she'd pushed too far. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. It was a rusty sound, like something that didn't get used often, but it was real. Yes, he said. It is. The moment stretched between them. Outside, the snow fell harder. Laura glanced at the clock. 9:30. Her family would be opening presents now. Sarah would make their mom laugh with some silly gift. Dad would pretend he didn't like his new tie even though he'd wear it to work every Monday for the next year. They'd drink too much eggnog and argue about whether Die Hard was a Christmas movie. And Laura was here, drinking coffee with a mobster in his sterile penthouse, missing all of it. Tell me about your family, Frank said, reading something on her face. Why? Same reason you asked about the bookstore. We're stuck here. Might as well talk. So Laura did. She told him about Sarah, younger by 3 years and infinitely more social. About her parents, who'd been married for 35 years and still held hands in public. About family game nights that got too competitive and summer vacations to the same lake house every year. About traditions and inside jokes and the messy, beautiful chaos of people who loved each other. Frank listened to all of it with an expression Laura couldn't read. That sounds nice, he said finally. Complicated, but nice. What about your family? Frank's face closed off. I don't have one. Everyone has a family. I had one. Past tense. They're gone now. The finality in his voice stopped Laura from asking more. But she wondered. What happened to Frank Costello's family? What turned him into this cold, controlled man who lived alone in a penthouse and made enemies for a living? They talked for another hour. Not about anything important. Just random things. Movies they'd seen. Places they'd been. Normal conversation that felt surreal given the circumstances. Laura found herself relaxing despite everything. Frank was intelligent and occasionally funny in a dry, unexpected way. He asked questions like he actually cared about the answers. It was almost midnight when Frank's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his entire demeanor changed. The pleasant conversationalist vanished, replaced by someone hard and focused. I need to take this, he said. Stay here. He walked down the hall to what Laura assumed was his bedroom, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was too low to hear, but his body language spoke volumes. Tension. Anger. Fear, maybe. Laura stood alone in the kitchen and wondered what fresh nightmare was unfolding. What new threat had emerged? How much danger was Frank actually in? How much danger was she in by extension? When Frank returned, his face was stone. There's been a development, he said. The person who leaked my information has been identified. One of my oldest associates. Someone I trusted. What happens now? Now we wait. My people are handling it. Handling it how? Frank met her eyes. You don't want to know. Laura's stomach turned. You mean you're going to kill him? I mean my people are handling it. That's all you need to know. That's not all I need to know. You brought me into this. You're keeping me here. I deserve to know what kind of man you are. Frank stepped closer. He didn't touch her, but his presence filled the space between them. You want to know what kind of man I am? I'm the kind who does what's necessary to survive. I'm the kind who protects what's mine. I'm the kind who doesn't apologize for either of those things. Does that scare you? Yes. Good. It should. They stood facing each other like opponents before a fight. Laura's heart hammered, but she didn't back down. Frank's eyes searched her face, looking for something. But you're not going to hurt me, Laura said quietly. I don't think you would. Don't mistake mercy for weakness. I'm not. I'm just observing. You had 100 chances to hurt me today. You didn't. You could have left me locked in a room somewhere. Instead, you gave me the guest room and nice clothes and coffee. You talked to me like a person. Whatever you are, you're not a monster. Frank's jaw tightened. You don't know me. No. But I'm getting there. Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Or something deeper. He turned away abruptly. You should get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow might be complicated. Is tomorrow going to be more or less complicated than today? I honestly don't know. Laura watched him pour himself another drink. His hand was steady, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself like he was braced for impact. Frank, she said. He looked up. Thank you. For the coffee. And for not being worse than you are. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. You're welcome. For what it's worth. Laura went back to the guest room, but she didn't sleep. She lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Frank moving around the penthouse. She heard him make phone calls, heard the murmur of his voice speaking in tones that ranged from cold authority to quiet menace. She heard him pace. Around 2 a.m, she heard something that sounded like glass breaking, followed by a long silence. She almost got up to check on him. Almost. But something stopped her. The sense that Frank Costello wouldn't want witnesses to whatever was happening in his head. The next morning, Laura woke to find Frank in the kitchen again, this time making breakfast. Actual breakfast. Eggs and toast and bacon that filled the penthouse with smells that reminded her of home. You cook? She asked, surprised. I survive, Frank said. Cooking is part of that. I wouldn't have guessed. Most people wouldn't. He plated food for both of them without asking if she wanted any. Laura sat at the counter and ate because she was hungry and because it felt like the most normal thing that had happened since she got in his car. The situation is resolving, Frank said between bites. My people found the leak. We're handling it. By tonight, the immediate threat should be neutralized. And then I can go home. Frank set down his fork. Not yet. Why not? Because even though we're handling the immediate problem, there are still people who might know about you. Who might have seen you get in my car. I need to make sure they understand you're not a target. How do you do that? Very carefully. Laura pushed eggs around her plate. So I'm still a prisoner. You're still under my protection. Stop calling it that. It doesn't make it better. Frank studied her for a long moment. What would make it better? Letting me go. I can't do that yet. Then nothing makes it better. They finished breakfast in tense silence. Frank cleared the dishes with military efficiency. Laura watched him move around the kitchen and tried to figure out the puzzle of this man. Mobster. Cook. Protector. Captor. He was all of those things and none of them fully explained him. Can I ask you something? Laura said. Frank turned. You're going to anyway. Why do you live like this? Alone in this huge place with no pictures on the walls and no one to share it with. Frank leaned against the counter. You want the truth? Yes. Because everyone I ever cared about either left, died, or betrayed me. This way is simpler. Safer. I don't have to worry about someone using my attachments against me. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It's practical. It's lonely. Frank's eyes met hers. Maybe. But I'm alive. Is that enough? It has to be. Laura stood and walked to the massive windows. The city stretched out below them, millions of people living their lives. From up here, they looked tiny. Insignificant. Like nothing they did mattered. She wondered if that's how Frank saw the world. From a distance. Protected. Alone. My sister told me once that the opposite of love isn't hate, Laura said quietly. It's isolation. Cutting yourself off from everyone and everything until you forget what connection feels like. Your sister sounds wise. She is. Much wiser than me. I doubt that. Laura turned to look at him. Why? Because you're standing here having this conversation with me instead of crying in the guest room. Because you adapted to an impossible situation with more grace than most people would manage. Because you see me, which not many people do. The words hung in the air between them. Laura felt something shift, some invisible line being crossed. This wasn't just captor and captive anymore. This was something more complicated. What happens when this is over? Laura asked. You go back to your life. I go back to mine. Just like that. Just like that. And we never see each other again. Frank's expression was unreadable. That would be best for both of us. Would it? He didn't answer. The day passed slowly. Frank spent most of it on the phone or working at a laptop in what he called his office. Laura explored the penthouse, finding it full of expensive things and empty of personality. No photos. No personal touches. Just furniture and art that looked like it came from a catalogue. She found one exception in Frank's office. A picture frame turned face down on a shelf. She knew she shouldn't look. She looked anyway. The photo showed a younger Frank, maybe early 20s, with his arm around a beautiful woman. They were both smiling. Real smiles. The kind that reach your eyes. Behind them stood an older couple who had to be Frank's parents. Everyone looked happy, like they belonged together. That was a long time ago, Frank's voice said from the doorway. Laura jumped, nearly dropping the frame. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. It's fine. Frank walked over and took the frame from her hands. He stared at the photo for a moment, then set it back down face down. My family. Before. Before what? Before everything fell apart. Laura waited, sensing he wanted to say more. My father worked for the organization, Frank said slowly. Legitimate side, mostly. Accounting, legal work. He thought he could keep the family clean while working with dirty money. He was wrong. When things went sideways on a deal, my father took the fall. He was arrested, tried, convicted. Died in prison 3 years into a 20-year sentence. Frank, I'm so sorry. My mother couldn't handle it. Too much shame, too much guilt. She died 6 months after him. Heart attack, the doctors said. But really, it was a broken heart. And the woman in the picture? Frank's jaw tightened. Elena. We were engaged. She left after my father's arrest. Said she couldn't be with someone from that world. I couldn't blame her. She was right to go. But you stayed in that world. I didn't have a choice. My father died with debts I had to pay. Favors I had to honor. The only way to survive was to go deeper, work my way up, become untouchable. So that's what I did. Laura looked at the man before her and saw him differently now. Not just a mobster. Not just a captor. But someone who'd been shaped by loss and grief and impossible choices. You're not your father, Laura said quietly. No. I'm worse. He at least tried to stay clean. I stopped pretending years ago. That doesn't make you worse. It makes you honest. Frank met her eyes. You have a very strange way of seeing the world. Or maybe you have a strange way of seeing yourself. Before Frank could respond, his phone rang. He answered it, his face going hard again. Laura watched the transformation. Vulnerable man to cold authority in seconds. He spoke in short, clipped sentences, then hung up. "There's something you need to see," he said. He led her to his office and pulled up something on his laptop. Security footage. Laura recognized the Uber pickup zone where she'd gotten into Frank's car. There she was, checking her phone, looking for her ride. And there was Frank's car, pulling into the zone at exactly the wrong moment. "Watch," Frank said. On the screen, Laura saw herself approach the car. Saw herself get in. Saw the door close. Then she saw something else. A different car pulling up seconds later. Men getting out. Men with guns. They moved toward Frank's car, but Frank was already pulling away. "Those are Dimmitri Volkov's people," Frank said quietly. "His arrival who's been trying to take over my territory for the past year. If I'd been sitting still when they arrived, they would have killed me. If you hadn't gotten in my car and confused the situation, giving me a reason to leave immediately, I'd be dead." Laura stared at the screen. "I saved your life. Accidentally, but yes. And those men. If they'd caught us, they would have killed us both. You because you were a witness. Me because that was their plan all along." Laura felt cold all over. She hadn't just stumbled into danger. She'd stumbled into something much worse. A war. An execution. She'd been seconds away from dying and she hadn't even known it. "So when you said you were protecting me," Laura said slowly, "you meant from them. From Volkov's people." "Yes. Because while they didn't get you that night, they know about you now. They saw you get in my car. And if they think you matter to me, they'll come after you to hurt me. But I don't matter to you." Frank closed the laptop. "They don't know that." Something in his voice made Laura look at him closely. His face was carefully neutral, but there was something in his eyes. Something he wasn't saying. "Frank. We need to make them believe you're nobody," Frank interrupted. "Just a mistake. Wrong place, wrong time. Once they understand that, they'll leave you alone." "How do we do that?" "I'm working on it." That night, Laura couldn't sleep again. She kept seeing the footage of those men with guns. Kept thinking about how close she'd come to dying without knowing it. Kept wondering what would have happened if she'd been a second slower getting in Frank's car. Or a second faster. How many tiny decisions had aligned to put her exactly where she was. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen for water. She found Frank there, standing by the windows, staring out at the city. He'd heard her approach but didn't turn around. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "No. You." "I don't sleep much anymore." Laura joined him at the windows. The snow had stopped. The city glittered below them like something magical. From up here, it was easy to forget about the danger. About the men with guns and the deadly games being played in shadows. "Tell me something," Frank said. "If you could go back to that moment when you got in my car, knowing everything you know now, would you do it differently?" Laura thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," she said finally. "I'd still get in." "Why?" "Because the alternative was you dying. And even though I didn't know you then, even though you've complicated my life in ways I never imagined, I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want you dead." Frank turned to look at her. In the dim light, his face was softer. "Younger. That's foolish. Probably. But it's true." They stood close together, close enough that Laura could feel the warmth radiating from him. Close enough to see the silver in his hair, the faint scar on his jaw, the way his eyes held too many shadows. "You should go back to bed," Frank said, but he didn't move away. "So should you. I told you. I don't sleep much. What do you do instead? Think. Plan. Try to stay one step ahead of people who want me dead." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." Laura reached out without thinking and touched his arm. Just a brief contact, but Frank froze like she'd burned him. He stared at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face. "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't try to save me. I'm not worth it." "I think you are. You don't know what I've done." "You're right. I don't. And maybe if I did, I'd feel differently. But right now, in this moment, I see someone who's tired. Someone who's lonely. Someone who keeps everyone at a distance because he's afraid of losing them. And I think that's its own kind of tragedy. Frank's expression cracked. Just for a second. Just enough for Laura to see the raw pain underneath. Then he pulled away, putting distance between them. Go to bed, Laura, he said, his voice rough. Please. Laura went. But as she lay in the guest room, she couldn't stop thinking about the look on Frank's face. The loneliness. The fear. The desperate need he was trying so hard to hide. She was falling for him. God help her, she was falling for a man who could never let himself fall back. The next morning, Frank was different. More distant. More professional. He'd rebuilt whatever walls Laura had started to breach. We're going out today, he announced over breakfast. Where? To see Dmitri Volkov. We're going to end this. Laura's blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means I'm going to make it clear that you're nobody. That harming you would serve no purpose. That you were just a random civilian who got caught up in something that had nothing to do with you. And he'll just believe you. If I handle it right, yes. And if you don't handle it right? Frank met her eyes. Then things get complicated. An hour later, they were in Frank's car again. But this time, Laura was there willingly. Sort of. They drove through the city to a restaurant that looked expensive and empty. Frank pulled around to a back entrance. Stay close to me, he said. Don't speak unless I tell you to. Don't show fear. These people respect strength. Nothing else. Laura nodded, her heart racing. They entered through a kitchen that smelled like garlic and expensive wine. Frank moved with complete confidence, like he owned the place. Maybe he did. Laura stayed close, trying to project calm she didn't feel. The dining room was empty except for one table. 3 men sat there, waiting. The man in the center was older than Frank, maybe 60, with the kind of face that looked like it had been carved from granite. His eyes tracked Laura like a predator sizing up prey. Costello, the man said. His accent was thick, Russian. You brought a guest. Dimmitri, Frank replied evenly. We need to talk. So talk. Who is the girl? Nobody. That's what we need to discuss. Dimitri's eyes narrowed. She was in your car. On Christmas Eve. When my men came for you. She got in the wrong car. She thought I was her Uber driver. One of Dimitri's men snorted with laughter. Dimmitri himself didn't smile. You expect me to believe this? I expect you to recognize the truth when you hear it. Frank pulled out a chair for Laura. She sat, trying not to shake. Frank remained standing. Her name is Laura. She works at a bookstore. She has a sister, parents, a completely normal life that has nothing to do with our business. She got in my car by mistake. That's all. Then why keep her? Why not let her go immediately? Because your men saw her. Because I didn't know what story they'd tell you. Because I needed to control the narrative before you decided she was worth taking. Dimmitri leaned back in his chair. So you admit she could be valuable. Could have been. If she meant something to me. But she doesn't. She's nobody. Letting her go now proves that. Laura's chest tightened at the words even though she knew they were necessary. Even though she knew Frank was protecting her. It still hurt hearing him call her nobody with such conviction. How do I know this isn't a trick? Dimmitri asked. How do I know you're not trying to protect someone who matters? Because if she mattered, I wouldn't bring her here. I wouldn't put her in front of you. I'd hide her somewhere you could never find her and dare you to try. The logic was sound. Dimmitri seemed to recognize that. He studied Laura with cold calculation. Tell me, girl. Are you important to Frank Costello? Laura swallowed hard. Frank had told her not to speak, but Dimmitri had asked her a direct question. She looked at Frank. He gave the smallest nod. No, Laura said, forcing her voice steady. I'm not important to him at all. I made a stupid mistake. I got in the wrong car. He's been trying to figure out how to get rid of me ever since. Get rid of you, Dimmitri repeated slowly. Interesting choice of words. I mean send me home. Back to my life. Where I belong. And where is that? Laura gave him her neighborhood, her street. Real information because she knew they could verify it anyway. Dimmitri nodded to one of his men, who pulled out a phone and started typing. Checking her story, probably. Looking for evidence that she was more than she claimed. The silence stretched. Laura counted her heartbeats. Tried not to think about the guns she was certain these men carried. Tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Finally, Dimitri's man looked up and nodded. She's real. Everything checks out. Works at Chen's Books on 4th Street. Lives in her apartment, pays rent on time. Social media shows normal life. Family photos. Nothing connects to Costello. Dimmitri turned back to Frank. So. She really is nobody. That's what I've been telling you. Then we have no problem. Frank didn't relax. I have your word. She's off limits. I have no interest in civilians who mean nothing. She can go home. Live her little life. As long as she forgets everything she saw, everything she heard. She will. Will you? Dimmitri asked Laura directly. Laura nodded. I just want to go back to normal. Pretend none of this happened. Smart girl. Dimmitri stood. So did his men. We're done here, Costello. But you and I. We still have unfinished business. I know. Good. I'd hate for you to forget. Dimmitri walked past them, his men following. At the door, he paused. One more thing. Next time you park in an Uber zone, you deserve whatever happens. Then he was gone. Frank let out a breath Laura hadn't realized he was holding. Come on, he said quietly. Let's go. They didn't speak until they were back in the car, doors locked, engine running. Then Frank gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. That was too close, he said. But it worked. He believed you. This time. But Dimmitri doesn't forget. And he doesn't forgive. This brought you safety, but it didn't end anything. What does that mean? Frank started driving. It means you can go home now. Back to your life. But you need to be careful. Vary your routine. Pay attention to your surroundings. If you see anything unusual, anyone following you, you call me immediately. Okay. I'm serious, Laura. These people, they're not done with me. And if they ever think you lied today, if they ever suspect you mean something to me, they'll come for you. I understand. They drove in silence. Laura watched the city pass by, the same buildings and streets she'd seen hundreds of times. Everything looked normal. But she knew she'd never see it the same way again. She'd always wonder who was watching. Who was listening. Whether the car behind her was following her or just happened to be going the same direction. Frank pulled up in front of her apartment building. Laura's heart sank. This was it. The end. She was getting her life back, exactly what she'd wanted. So why did it feel like losing something? Thank you, she said. For keeping me safe. For handling that. It's the least I could do since I'm the reason you were in danger in the first place. That's not how I see it. You could have handled this differently. Worse. But you didn't. Frank stared straight ahead. You should go. Laura reached for the door handle, then stopped. Frank, can I ask you something? What? When you told Dimmitri I was nobody. When you said I didn't matter. Did you mean it? Frank's jaw tightened. I said what needed to be said to keep you alive. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Laura studied his profile. The hard lines, the careful control, the walls he'd rebuilt so completely. You're going to be alone forever if you keep doing this. Pushing people away. Convincing yourself you're better off isolated. Maybe I am better off. Or maybe you're just scared. Frank finally looked at her. His eyes were storm gray, full of things he wouldn't say. Go home, Laura. Forget about me. Live your life. That's the only way this ends well. What if I don't want to forget? Then you're a fool. The words stung. Laura blinked back unexpected tears. Maybe. But at least I'm not a coward. She got out of the car before Frank could respond. She didn't look back as she walked to her building, even though she could feel him watching. She heard his car drive away only after she'd disappeared inside. Laura's apartment felt strange. Too small after Frank's penthouse. Too quiet after the tension of the past 2 days. She stood in her living room and felt like a stranger in her own life. Her phone buzzed. 15 missed calls from Sarah. 20 texts. Laura called her back. "Oh my God, Laura, where have you been? We've been so worried. I'm sorry. I told you, work thing. It got complicated. For 2 days. What kind of bookstore emergency lasts 2 days? The complicated kind. I'm home now. I'm fine. I promise. You sound weird. Are you sure you're okay?" No, Laura thought. I'm not okay. I just spent 2 days with a man who terrified me and fascinated me in equal measure. A man who's going to live alone in his fortress forever because he's too damaged to let anyone in. A man I'll never see again, even though the thought of that makes my chest ache. I'm just tired, Laura said. Can I call you tomorrow? I need to sleep. Promise. Promise. Laura hung up and sat on her couch. She should feel relieved. She should feel grateful to be home, safe, back to normal. Instead, she felt hollow. Like she'd left part of herself in that penthouse with Frank. She picked up a book from her coffee table. One of her favorites, something she'd read a dozen times. But the words wouldn't stick. Her mind kept drifting back to grey eyes and careful hands and a voice that said you're nobody, like it was killing him. Laura spent Christmas Day with her family. She smiled at the right times, laughed at her dad's jokes, hugged her mom. But Sarah kept giving her concerned looks. On their way out, Sarah pulled her aside. What happened? Sarah asked. And don't say work. Something happened. I can't talk about it. Laura. I mean it, Sarah. I can't. Please don't push. Sarah studied her face. Did someone hurt you? No. Not like you mean. I met someone. Someone complicated. And now it's over and I don't know how to feel about any of it. Do you want to talk about it? I can't. I wish I could, but I can't. Sarah hugged her. Okay. But I'm here when you're ready. Always. Laura went back to work the next day. Mrs. Chen was thrilled to see her, talking about the Christmas rush and the book orders that came in. Everything was normal. Exactly as Laura had left it. But she moved through her shift like she was underwater, distant from everything. A customer asked for a book recommendation. Laura suggested one without thinking. The customer left happy. Laura couldn't even remember what book she'd recommended. That night, alone in her apartment, Laura finally let herself cry. Not the quiet tears from the guest room. Real sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for the life she'd lost, even though it had only been 2 days. She cried for Frank, alone in his penthouse. She cried for the impossibility of it all. 3 days later, Laura was working the register when someone walked into the bookstore. She looked up automatically with her customer service smile. The smile died. Frank stood in the doorway, looking completely out of place among the bookshelves and reading nooks. He wore a different expensive suit. His hair was perfect. But his eyes found hers immediately, and Laura saw something there she couldn't name. Frank, she breathed. Hi, he said. Mrs. Chen appeared from the back room. Can I help you find something? Frank didn't take his eyes off Laura. I'm looking for a book. I was told the person at the register gives excellent recommendations. Laura's heart hammered. I'm working. I can wait. He sat in one of the reading chairs like he had all the time in the world. Mrs. Chen gave Laura a curious look but didn't comment. Laura tried to focus on her work. Tried to help customers. Tried to ignore the way Frank watched her every move. When her shift ended, Frank was still there, reading a book he'd pulled from a nearby shelf. Laura walked over. What are you doing here? She asked. Frank closed the book. I was in the neighborhood. No, you weren't. You're right. I wasn't. Frank. Can we talk? Outside. Laura glanced at Mrs. Chen, who was pretending not to watch. Fine. But just for a minute. They walked outside into the cold afternoon. Frank shoved his hands in his pockets, looking almost nervous. Laura had never seen him nervous before. I shouldn't be here, Frank said. Then why are you? Because I can't stop thinking about you. Because every room in my penthouse reminds me of you. Because I told you that you were nobody and it was the biggest lie I've ever told. Laura's breath caught. Frank. I know I have no right to say any of this. I know you're better off without me. I know being with me would put you in danger. But I had to see you. I had to tell you that when I said you didn't matter, I was lying. To Dimmitri. To myself. To you. Why are you telling me this? Because you called me a coward. And you were right. I've been a coward my entire adult life. Hiding behind walls and excuses and telling myself I was better off alone. But the truth is, I've been alone because I was too scared to be anything else. Laura stared at him. This is crazy. You said yourself, being with you is dangerous. That people would use me to hurt you. I know. So what's changed? Frank met her eyes. Everything. Nothing. I don't know. All I know is that going back to how things were before feels impossible now. You're in my head, Laura. You're in my chest. You made me remember what it feels like to want something other than survival. I don't know what to say. Say you felt it too. Tell me I'm not imagining this. Laura wrapped her arms around herself. I felt it. I feel it. But that doesn't make this possible. You have enemies. Dimitri's still out there. Your life is dangerous. Yes. So where does that leave us? Frank stepped closer. I don't know. But I'm tired of making decisions based on fear. I'm tired of letting the past dictate my future. I'm tired of being alone in that goddamn penthouse wishing you were there. Frank. I'm not asking you to commit to anything. I'm not asking you to put yourself in danger. I'm just asking if maybe, possibly, we could try. Carefully. See what this is. Laura looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the vulnerability he was trying so hard to show her. Saw the fear underneath. Saw someone who'd spent years building walls finally asking someone to help tear them down. This is insane, Laura said. Probably. You're a mobster. Technically, businessman with questionable associations. This could go wrong in about 1,000 different ways. I know. I'd be risking everything. I know that too. Laura took a breath. Thought about her safe, normal life. Thought about the hollow feeling that had filled her since Frank drove away. Thought about the look in his eyes when he called her nobody and how much it had hurt them both. One condition, she said. Anything. If this gets too dangerous. If being with you puts me in real jeopardy. You let me go. No arguments. No trying to protect me by keeping me locked up. You let me walk away. Deal? Frank's jaw tightened. Deal. Okay. Then yes. We can try. Something transformed Frank's face. Relief and joy and disbelief all at once. He reached out slowly, giving Laura time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his hands like she was something precious. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet. I might drive you crazy. Too late. You already have. He leaned down and kissed her. It was soft and careful and full of things neither of them knew how to say. Laura felt something in her chest crack open, something that felt like hope. When they pulled apart, Frank rested his forehead against hers. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done. Me too. We're going to regret this. Probably. But I can't seem to care. Me neither. They stood together on the sidewalk while the world moved around them. Laura knew this was reckless. Knew she was walking into something complicated and potentially dangerous. Knew her life would never be simple again. But when Frank looked at her like she was the only thing in his universe that mattered, simple didn't seem that important anymore. Over the next few weeks, Laura and Frank learned to navigate their new reality. Frank was careful, almost paranoid about keeping her safe. They didn't go out in public much. No romantic dinners at restaurants where Frank's enemies might see them. No obvious displays that would make Laura a target. Instead, Frank came to her apartment. They cooked dinner together, Frank showing surprising skill in the kitchen. They watched movies. talked for hours about everything and nothing. Laura learned that Frank was funny when he relaxed, intelligent in ways that had nothing to do with business, and surprisingly well-read despite his claims that he never had time. "You lied," Laura said one night, pointing to his encyclopedic knowledge of Russian literature. "About what? You said you hadn't read for pleasure in years. But you've definitely read Dostoevsky." Frank smiled. "Okay, you caught me. I read sometimes. Usually late at night when I can't sleep." "What else have you read?" "Everything in your store, probably. I used to go there sometimes. Before. Just to walk around. Feel normal for an hour." "You came to my store? When?" "Thursdays, usually. During your book club." "You were there. I never saw you." "That was the point. I'd browse in the back, listen to people discuss books, pretend I was someone who could have that kind of life." Laura set down her wine glass. "Frank, that's pathetic. No. Sad. And beautiful. And it makes me want to kiss you." So she did. But the outside world kept intruding. Frank still had business to handle. Dimmitri was still a threat, circling like a shark. Frank's organization had problems that needed his attention. He tried to keep Laura separate from all of it, but sometimes the stress showed through. One night, Laura woke in Frank's penthouse. She'd started staying there more often, to find his side of the bed empty. She found him in his office, staring at financial reports with hollow eyes. "Come back to bed," she said from the doorway. "Can't. Too much to do." "Frank, it's 3 in the morning." "I know." Laura walked over and closed his laptop. Frank looked up, irritated. "I need to." "You need to sleep. Whatever this is can wait 6 hours. "It can't. If I don't solve this, people get hurt. And if you burn yourself out, more people get hurt. Including you. Including me because I'll worry about you." Frank's expression softened. "I'm not used to anyone worrying about me. Get used to it." She pulled him up from the chair and led him back to the bedroom. Frank resisted for about 3 seconds, then surrendered. In bed, he held her like she was an anchor keeping him from drifting away. "Tell me something," Laura said into the darkness. "What?" "Tell me something good. Something that has nothing to do with business or danger or any of this. Tell me about something that makes you happy." Frank was quiet for so long Laura thought he'd fallen asleep. Then he said, "Sunday mornings. When I was a kid, my mother made pancakes every Sunday. The whole house would smell like butter and vanilla. My father would read the newspaper. Elena and I would play cards at the kitchen table. Nothing special. Just normal family time. But it was perfect. Those mornings were perfect." Laura laced her fingers through his. "That's beautiful. It was a long time ago. Doesn't make it less beautiful." Frank pulled her closer. "You make me remember things like that. Good things I thought I'd forgotten. Is that a bad thing?" "No. It's terrifying. But not bad." They fell asleep tangled together, and for a few hours, the dangerous world outside couldn't touch them. But danger has a way of finding people like Frank. It came on a Tuesday afternoon when Laura was at work. Frank called, his voice tight with urgency. "Where are you?" "At work." "Why? What's wrong?" "Stay there. Don't leave. I'm sending security." "Frank, you're scaring me." "Dimmitri knows. Someone told him about us. He knows you matter to me. I need you somewhere safe. Now." Laura's blood went cold. "How did he find out?" "I don't know. But my people are on their way. When they arrive, go with them. No arguments." "Okay. But Frank, I'll fix this. I promise. Just stay safe." He hung up. Laura stood frozen behind the register, her mind racing. Mrs. Chen noticed. "Laura, what's wrong?" Before Laura could answer, 3 men in suits walked into the bookstore. One of them approached. "Miss Hayes. Mr. Costello sent us. We need to leave. Now." "What's happening?" Mrs. Chen demanded. "Laura, who are these people?" "It's complicated. I have to go. I'm so sorry." Laura let the men escort her out. They put her in a car with tinted windows and drove away from her normal life for the second time. But this time, she knew exactly what she was getting into. They didn't take her to Frank's penthouse. Instead, they drove to a building Laura didn't recognize. Underground parking. Elevator to the 20th floor. An apartment that looked like it had been set up in a hurry. Temporary furniture. Supplies stacked in corners. A safe house. Mr. Costello will be here soon, one of the men said. Don't leave this apartment for any reason. Don't answer the door unless you hear the code knock. Don't use your phone. Then they were gone. Laura sat on a couch that still had the tags attached and tried not to panic. This was real. This was happening. Dimmitri knew about her. Which meant she was a target. Which meant Frank had been right all along. Being with him put her in danger. Frank arrived 2 hours later. He looked like he'd aged years in a single day. Are you okay? I'm fine. Scared, but fine. What's happening? Frank paced the small apartment like a caged animal. Dimmitri found out about us. One of my people sold me out. Same one who leaked the original deal, we think. He's been working for Dimmitri this whole time. What does that mean for us? It means Dimmitri now knows the truth. That I lied when I said you didn't matter. That you're important to me. Which makes you a target. So what do we do? Frank stopped pacing. I end this. Tonight. I take the fight to Dimmitri before he can come after you. What does that mean exactly? It means I do what I should have done months ago. I eliminate the threat. Laura stood up. You mean you're going to kill him? If necessary. Frank. This is who I am, Laura. This is the world I live in. I tried to keep you separate from it, but that's not possible anymore. So now I have to protect you the only way I know how. By becoming a murderer? Frank's eyes flashed. I've been a murderer for a long time. I've done things you can't imagine. This isn't new. This is just necessary. There has to be another way. There isn't. Not anymore. Dimmitri won't stop. He'll keep coming after you. After us. The only way to end this is to end him. Laura walked over and grabbed Frank's face, forcing him to look at her. Listen to me. I knew what I was getting into when I said yes to this. I knew you were dangerous. I knew your world was violent. But I don't want you to become more of a monster just to protect me. There has to be another way. Like what? I don't know. But you're smart. You've survived this long by being smarter than everyone else. So be smart now. Find a way that doesn't involve more blood. Frank pulled away from her. You don't understand. In my world, there's only one language that matters. Power. Violence. Dimmitri won't respond to anything else. Then make him respond to something else. You said you run legitimate businesses too, right? Real estate. Shipping. So hit him there. In ways he won't expect. In ways that don't make you into what he is. Frank stared at her. You want me to what? Sue him? I want you to think creatively. Use your brain instead of your gun. Isn't that what makes you different from people like Dimmitri? I stopped being different from people like Dimmitri a long time ago. I don't believe that. If you were really like him, you would have hurt me that first night. But you didn't. You kept me safe. You talked to me. You saw me as a person. That's not who Dimmitri is. That's who you are. Frank sat down heavily on the couch. He looked exhausted. Defeated. Even if I wanted to find another way, I don't know if I can. This is all I know. Laura sat beside him. Then let me help. I don't know anything about your world, but I know about people. And I know that violence only breeds more violence. If you kill Dimmitri, someone else will just take his place. Someone who'll want revenge. This cycle never ends unless someone chooses to end it differently. You're asking me to take a massive risk. With your life. With mine. I know. But isn't that what you've been doing since the moment you told me I mattered? Taking risks. Choosing something other than survival? Frank looked at her. Really looked at her. And Laura saw the moment something shifted. Not a decision exactly. But a possibility. A tiny crack in the certainty that violence was the only answer. "What would you suggest?" he asked quietly. Laura took a breath. "Tell me everything about Dimmitri. His businesses. His weaknesses. Everything. And let's figure this out together." So Frank did. He told her about Dimitri's operations. The shipping company that moved illegal goods under the cover of legitimate cargo. The real estate holdings purchased with laundered money. The network of people who owed Dimmitri favors. The complicated web of legality and crime that let people like Dimmitri operate in the shadows. Laura listened carefully. Her mind worked through possibilities, connections, ideas. She wasn't an expert in Frank's world, but she understood systems. She understood how things connected. And she understood that every system had weaknesses. "What if," Laura said slowly, "instead of killing Dimmitri, you destroyed his credibility, his power base, made him untouchable to his own people?" "How?" "You said he runs a shipping company. What if evidence surfaced that he was double-crossing his own clients, selling their secrets to competitors? Nobody would work with him anymore. He'd be too dangerous to trust." Frank frowned. "That would require proof. Documentation. We'd need access to his records. Do you have anyone inside his organization?" "Had one. He's dead now. But you know his operations. You must have surveillance. Intel." Frank's eyes sharpened. "I have some. Not much, but some. But creating fake evidence, that's risky. If anyone figured out it was fabricated, it would blow back on us. Then don't make it fake. Look for real evidence. Real deals he's made. Real betrayals. Everyone has secrets, Frank. Even Dimmitri. Find his. Expose them. Let his own people tear him apart." Frank stood up and started pacing again, but this time with purpose. With energy. "That could work. If we could prove he's been playing both sides. If we could show his partners that he's been stealing from them. They'd turn on him faster than they'd come after me." "Exactly. But the evidence would have to be solid. Undeniable. We'd need documents. Financial records. Communications. And Dimitri's careful. He doesn't leave trails." Laura smiled. "Everyone leaves trails. You just have to know where to look." They spent the next several hours planning. Frank made calls, pulling in resources, calling in favors. His people started digging through everything they had on Dimitri's operations, looking for inconsistencies, for patterns, for the secrets Dimmitri thought he'd buried. Meanwhile, Laura's mind worked differently. She thought about human behavior, about how people like Dimmitri operated. They were paranoid, which meant they kept records, insurance policies against betrayal, evidence they could use if things went wrong. The question was where? "What about his accountant?" Laura asked suddenly. Frank paused mid-conversation. "What about him?" "Everyone has an accountant. Someone who knows where the money really goes. If Dimmitri's been stealing from his partners, his accountant would know." "Do you know who handles his finances?" Frank's expression shifted. "Marcus Valinsky, Russian expat. Handles books for half the operations in the city. And would Marcus have reason to turn on Dimmitri? Everyone has a price. Then that's where we start." Frank looked at Laura like he was seeing her for the first time. "You're brilliant. You know that. I'm a bookseller who watches too much television. But thanks." Frank pulled her into a kiss that felt like gratitude and amazement and something deeper. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you. For seeing a way out when all I could see was more blood. Don't thank me yet. We still have to make this work. We will. Together." The next few days were intense. Frank's people located Marcus Valinsky, approached him carefully, made him an offer. Immunity. Protection. A new identity in exchange for everything he knew about Dimitri's operations. Marcus took the deal. What he provided was devastating. Years of financial records showing Dimmitri had been systematically stealing from his own partners, selling information to competitors, manipulating deals to benefit himself. Every crime Dimmitri had ever accused others of committing, he'd committed himself. Frank compiled it all into an airtight package. Then he did something unexpected. He didn't go to the police. He didn't use it to threaten Dimmitri directly. Instead, he sent copies to every single one of Dimmitri's partners. Every person Dimmitri had ever worked with. Every organization that relied on him. He exposed Dimmitri to his own people. The response was immediate and brutal. Within 48 hours, Dimmitri's network collapsed. Partners withdrew. Associates vanished. People who'd once protected him turned their backs. Dimmitri found himself isolated, powerless, and facing threats from every direction. Frank got word that Dimmitri had fled the city entirely. Gone to ground somewhere in Europe, trying to rebuild. But his power base was destroyed. His reputation ruined. He was no longer a threat. It was over. Frank came to the safe house apartment where Laura had been staying. She opened the door and saw the expression on his face. "It's done," he said. "Really? Really? Dimmitri's gone. His organization is fractured. Nobody's coming after you. You're safe." Laura threw her arms around him. Frank held her tight, his face buried in her hair. "You did it," she whispered. "You found another way. We did it. This was your idea. Your plan. I just executed it. We make a good team. Yeah. We do." They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other. Then Frank pulled back slightly. "So what happens now?" "What do you mean?" "I mean we're safe. The immediate threat is gone. You can go back to your life. Your apartment. Your job. Everything can go back to normal." Laura looked at him carefully. "Is that what you want?" "I want you to have a choice. A real choice. Not one made under duress or fear or because you're trapped in a safe house." "Frank, I made my choice weeks ago. When I said yes on that sidewalk. Nothing's changed. Everything's changed. You've seen what my life is really like. The danger. The complications. The way violence is always just around the corner. Are you sure you still want to be part of that?" Laura took Frank's face in her hands. "I'm not in love with your life. I'm in love with you. And yes, your world is dangerous. But you just proved you're not defined by that world. You found a way out of violence when you could have taken the easy path. That's who you are. That's who I chose." Frank's eyes searched hers. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. Besides, someone needs to keep you from reverting to mobster tendencies. Might as well be me." Frank laughed. Actually laughed. The sound filled the apartment, and Laura realized she'd never heard him laugh like that before. Free and genuine and full of real joy. "Okay," he said. "Then let's do this. For real. No more hiding. No more keeping you separate from my life. We figure this out together." "Together," Laura agreed. They went back to Frank's penthouse that night. But it felt different now. Less like a fortress and more like a home. Frank had already started making changes. There were photos on the shelves now. One of Laura, candid, laughing at something. One of his parents from before everything went wrong. Small personal touches that made the space feel lived in. "You've been decorating," Laura observed. "I had someone add some things. I figured if you were going to spend time here, it should feel less like a mausoleum. It's perfect." That night, they cooked dinner together. Frank opened a bottle of expensive wine. They ate at the massive dining table that had probably never been used before. They talked about the future. About possibilities. About what their life might look like now that they weren't just surviving but actually living. "I've been thinking," Frank said over dessert. "About what?" "About transitioning more of my business to legitimate operations. I can't change everything overnight. I have obligations. People who depend on me. But I could start moving away from the shadowy parts. Focus on the real estate development. The legal side. That would be amazing. But Frank, you don't have to do that for me. I'm doing it for both of us. I want a life that's not constantly looking over my shoulder. I want to be able to take you to dinner without worrying about who sees us." I want to wake up in the morning without calculating survival odds. I'm tired, Laura. I've been tired for years. But with you, I can finally imagine something different. Laura reached across the table and took his hand. Then let's build something different. Together. It won't be easy. There will be people who resist. Old associates who don't want things to change. I know. But you're Frank Costello. You've survived this long by being smarter than everyone else. If anyone can navigate a transition like this, it's you. Frank squeezed her hand. How did I get this lucky? Finding you? You didn't find me. I got in your car, remember? Best mistake you ever made. Second best. The best was saying yes on that sidewalk. They finished dinner and moved to the couch. Frank pulled Laura against his side, and they watched the city lights twinkle below. It was peaceful in a way Laura never expected to feel in this penthouse. In this life. Tell me something, Frank said after a while. What? Tell me about your dreams. Not the ones you had before all this. The ones you have now. What do you want your life to look like? Laura thought about it. I want to keep working at the bookstore. At least for now. Mrs. Chen needs me, and I love that job. But maybe eventually, I'd like to open my own place. A bookstore cafe hybrid. Somewhere people can read and talk and feel at home. I could help with that. Funding. Real estate connections. I'd want to do it mostly on my own. But having your expertise would be nice. What else? I want Sunday mornings. Like the ones you described from your childhood. Pancakes and newspapers and normal family time. I want to build new memories that are as good as the old ones you lost. Frank's arm tightened around her. I'd like that too. And I want you to teach me about your world. Not the dangerous parts, but the business parts. I want to understand what you do. How it works. Maybe I can help. Be a real partner, not just someone you protect. You already are a partner. You proved that with the Dimmitri situation. Then let me be more involved. I'm smart, Frank. I can learn. Use me. Frank turned to look at her. You really want that? I really do. I'm in this relationship, which means I'm in your life. All of it. The good and the complicated. I don't want to be kept separate. Okay. Then starting tomorrow, you're my official consultant. I'll teach you everything. Official consultant. Do I get a salary? You get unlimited access to my credit cards and my heart. Better. Laura laughed. Much better. They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer. Then Frank said quietly, I love you. I don't think I've said that yet. But I do. I love you, Laura. Laura's chest swelled with emotion. I love you too. Even when you're being an overprotective mobster with control issues. Businessman with control issues. Same thing. Frank kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Laura saw her future in his eyes. Complicated and challenging and absolutely worth it. The next few months were an education. Frank kept his word. He brought Laura into his world, teaching her about his operations. She learned about property development and zoning laws and how to read financial statements. She sat in on meetings, quietly observing at first, then gradually contributing ideas. Frank's associates were skeptical initially. Who was this bookstore girl who thought she could understand their world? But Laura proved herself. She had insights they didn't expect. Fresh perspectives. Ways of solving problems that didn't involve threats or violence. One afternoon, during a particularly tense negotiation over a property development deal, Laura spoke up. The other party was being unreasonable, demanding concessions that would tank the project's profitability. Frank's people were ready to walk away. Some were suggesting more aggressive tactics. What if we approached this differently? Laura said. Everyone turned to look at her. Frank gestured for her to continue. You're focused on this one property, Laura said to the opposing negotiator. But what you really need is legitimacy. Your company has a reputation problem. People see you as cutthroat. That's limiting your access to premium deals. What if instead of fighting over terms, we structured a partnership? Frank's company has an excellent reputation. An association with us could open doors for you that are currently closed. The negotiator frowned. What kind of partnership? Laura outlined a structure where both companies would benefit. The other party would get the legitimacy and connections they needed. Frank would get the property deal on better terms. Everyone would win. After 2 hours of discussion, they had a deal. As they left the meeting, Frank pulled Laura aside. That was brilliant. Where did you learn to negotiate like that? I've been managing entitled customers at the bookstore for 3 years. Same principles, bigger stakes. Frank laughed. Remind me never to underestimate you. I plan to. Laura's life became a balancing act. Mornings at the bookstore, where she still loved helping customers find the perfect book. Afternoons and evenings with Frank, learning his business, contributing where she could. It was exhausting but exhilarating. Mrs. Chen noticed the change in her. One day, during a quiet moment at the store, she pulled Laura aside. You seem different. Happier. More confident. I am happy, Laura admitted. This has something to do with that man who came looking for you, doesn't it? The one in the expensive suit. Laura hesitated. Yes. We're together. Is he good to you? He's complicated. But yes, he's good to me. Mrs. Chen studied her face. Complicated how? I can't really explain. But I promise, I'm okay. Better than okay. Just be careful, dear. Some kinds of complicated aren't worth it. I know. But this is. Mrs. Chen didn't push, but Laura could see the concern in her eyes. It made Laura wonder how much she could tell the people in her old life about her new one. How much they would understand. Sarah was more direct. She cornered Laura at their parents' house during Sunday dinner. Okay, spill. Who is this mystery man you've been seeing? Why haven't we met him? It's complicated, Sarah. Everything with you is complicated lately. Just tell me his name at least. Frank. His name is Frank. And what does Frank do? Business. Real estate development mostly. Sarah's eyes narrowed. You're being evasive. What's going on? Is he married? Significantly older? In witness protection? Laura couldn't help but laugh at the last one. No to married. Yes to older, but not significantly. 43. And no to witness protection, though that's ironically closer than you might think. Laura, you're scaring me. What does that mean? Laura took a breath. Frank comes from a complicated background. His business is legitimate now, but it hasn't always been. He's working to transition away from some of his past associations. It's messy and complex, and I can't tell you everything. But I love him, Sarah. And he loves me. And I promise I'm being careful. Sarah processed this. When you say complicated background, are we talking about what I think we're talking about? Probably. But he's not what you'd expect. He's kind and intelligent and trying to build something better. He just has to navigate around some difficult history. Oh my God, Laura. You're dating a mobster. Former mobster. Mostly. He's transitioning. Sarah sat down heavily. This is insane. Mom and Dad would lose their minds. Which is why we're not telling them yet. Not until things are more stable. And when will that be? I don't know. But Sarah, I need you to trust me. I know what I'm doing. Or at least I'm figuring it out. Sarah looked at her sister for a long moment. Then she sighed. Okay. I trust you. You've always been the smart one. But promise me something. What? Promise me that if things get dangerous, if this becomes more than you can handle, you'll walk away. No matter how much you love him. I promise. Sarah hugged her. I hope he's worth it. He is. That night, Laura told Frank about the conversation. He listened with his usual intense focus. Are you okay with your sister knowing? I trust her. She won't tell anyone. But Frank, we can't keep this secret forever. Eventually, people are going to figure out who you are. What you were. Is that going to be a problem? Frank considered this. It might be. Some people will judge you for being with me. Some will try to use our relationship against us. But I've been thinking about that. About going more public. About owning my past while showing the future I'm building. What does that mean? It means maybe it's time to stop hiding. To be open about who we are and what we're doing. The more legitimate my operations become, the less I have to hide. And having you by my side publicly would actually help. It shows I'm serious about changing. You'd be okay with that? With people knowing about us? I'd prefer it. I'm tired of acting like you're a secret. Like what we have is something to be ashamed of. You're the best thing in my life, Laura. I want everyone to know that. Laura felt tears prick her eyes. You're going to make me cry. Good tears, I hope. The best tears. They decided to take things public gradually. First, Frank brought Laura to a charity gala. It was a legitimate event, the kind where Frank's real estate company was a major sponsor. Laura wore a dress that cost more than her monthly rent, courtesy of Frank's insistence that she deserved nice things. When they walked in together, Laura felt eyes turn toward them. People whispered. Frank kept his hand on her back, protective but not possessive. He introduced her to everyone as his partner, and the word carried weight. Some people were kind. They welcomed Laura warmly, clearly curious but polite. Others were colder. Their judgments clear in the way they looked at her. Gold digger. Trophy girlfriend. Someone who didn't belong. Laura held her head high and ignored the whispers. She knew who she was. She knew what she and Frank had. That was enough. During dinner, a woman at their table made a pointed comment. So, Laura, Frank tells us you work at a bookstore. How charming. It must be quite a change, attending events like this. The condescension was clear. Frank tensed beside her, but Laura just smiled. It is different. But in some ways, it's the same. Both involve understanding what people need and helping them find it. At the bookstore, it's books. Here, it's connections and opportunities. The principles aren't that different. The woman blinked, caught off guard by Laura's gracious response. Frank squeezed Laura's hand under the table, proud. Later, as they danced, Frank pulled her close. You handled that perfectly. I've dealt with worse at the bookstore. You'd be surprised how condescending some customers can be about romance novels. I love you. I love you too. Even when you bring me to fancy parties where people judge me. They're jealous. You're brilliant and beautiful and you make me better. They can see that, and it threatens them. You're biased. Absolutely. But also correct. As weeks turned into months, Laura and Frank settled into their life together. She officially moved into the penthouse, though she kept her apartment as a just-in-case. They developed routines. Sunday morning pancakes, just like Frank remembered from childhood. Thursday evening book club at the store, which Frank started attending. Saturday mornings sleeping in and then exploring the city together. Frank's business continued to shift toward legitimate operations. It was slow. There were setbacks. Some old associates didn't want to accept the changes. But Frank was patient and strategic. He slowly disentangled himself from the shadowy parts of his empire while building up the legitimate side. Laura helped where she could. She had a talent for seeing opportunities others missed. For connecting disparate ideas into something new. Frank started calling her his secret weapon. One evening, about 8 months after that Christmas Eve when everything changed, Frank came home looking nervous. Laura noticed immediately. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. But there's something I need to show you. He led her to his office and opened a drawer. Inside was a small velvet box. Laura's breath caught. Before you panic, Frank said quickly, this isn't what you think. I mean, it is, but not right now. Let me explain. He opened the box. Inside was the most beautiful ring Laura had ever seen. Simple but elegant. A single diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light. This was my grandmother's ring, Frank said quietly. The only thing I have left from my family. I've been carrying it around for weeks, trying to figure out the right time. The right words. But I realized there's no perfect moment. There's just us. And what we've built together. Frank. I'm not asking you to marry me right now. We've only been together 8 months. That's too fast, and I know it. But I want you to know my intentions. I want you to know that this is where we're heading. That I see a future with you. A real future. Marriage and partnership and building a life that's nothing like what I had before. Laura's eyes filled with tears. You're really doing this? I'm really doing this. When you're ready. When we're ready. No pressure. No timeline. Just a promise that I'm in this for the long haul. That you're it for me, Laura. You're everything. Laura threw her arms around him. I love you so much. And yes, when the time is right, yes to all of it. Frank held her tight. I was hoping you'd say that. Did you really think I'd say anything else? I hoped. But you've surprised me before. They stood there in Frank's office, holding each other, the ring box still open on the desk. Outside, the city sparkled with lights. Inside, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way imagined their future together. Tell me something, Laura said after a while. What? Tell me what you imagine. Our future. What does it look like? Frank pulled back enough to see her face. I imagine a house. Not a penthouse. A real house with a yard and neighbors who wave hello. I imagine Sunday dinners with your family, learning to fit into that chaos you describe so lovingly. I imagine kids maybe, if you want them. Teaching them to make pancakes. Reading them books you recommend. Building the kind of family I lost. That sounds perfect. What do you imagine? All of that. Plus growing old together. Watching you fully transition into the legitimate businessman you're becoming. Maybe opening that bookstore cafe I mentioned. Having a life that's complicated but good. Full of love and challenge and partnership. I can see that. All of it. Then let's make it happen. One day at a time. Frank kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. One day at a time. They went to bed that night wrapped in each other and dreams of the future. The ring stayed in Frank's office, a symbol of intentions and promises waiting for the right moment. That moment came 6 months later. Valentine's Day. Frank had planned an elaborate dinner at home, cooking everything himself. Laura came home from the bookstore to find the penthouse transformed. Candles everywhere. Music playing. The table set with fine china. What's all this? Laura asked, delighted. Valentine's Day. I know it's cliché, but I wanted to do something special. They ate the meal Frank had prepared, laughing and talking like they did every night. But Laura could sense Frank's nervous energy. Something was building. After dessert, Frank stood up. Let's go look at the city. They walked to the massive windows. The view never got old. All those lights. All those lives. All that possibility. When I bought this place, Frank said quietly, I thought of it as a fortress. A place to hide from the world. I never imagined it could be a home. But then you got in my car on Christmas Eve. You turned my life upside down. You made me remember what it felt like to want more than survival. He turned to face her, and Laura saw the velvet box in his hand. Laura Hayes, you walked into my life by accident and stayed on purpose. You've made me better. Made me braver. Made me believe I could have the kind of life I thought was lost forever. So I'm asking now, not because it's Valentine's Day, but because I can't wait another day to make this official. Frank opened the box, revealing his grandmother's ring. Will you marry me? Will you build this impossible, beautiful life with me? Laura was crying before he finished. Yes. Yes, of course yes. Frank slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. He pulled her into a kiss that tasted like joy and forever. When they broke apart, both were crying. I love you, Frank said. Thank you for getting in the wrong car. I love you too. Thank you for locking the doors. They stood together, holding each other, the engagement ring catching the city lights. Two people who'd found each other in danger and chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage of Frank's old life. The wedding was 6 months later. Small and intimate. Just family and close friends. They got married in the bookstore after hours, surrounded by books and the people who mattered most. Sarah was Laura's maid of honor. One of Frank's oldest associates, someone who'd supported his transition to legitimacy, was his best man. Laura wore a simple white dress. Frank wore a suit that made him look distinguished and happy. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I promise to always see you," Laura said. "Not the man you were, but the man you're becoming. I promise to be your partner in every sense. To challenge you when you need it and support you always. I promise to keep getting in your car, metaphorically speaking, for the rest of our lives." Frank's voice was rough with emotion when he spoke. "I promise to keep you safe, but not locked away. To trust you with everything I am and everything I'm building. I promise to remember that violence isn't the only answer, and that sometimes the bravest thing is to be vulnerable. I promise to love you with everything I have, every single day, for as long as I live." They kissed as husband and wife. The small crowd cheered. Mrs. Chen dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Sarah grinned at her sister. Even Frank's associate looked moved. At the reception, held in a restaurant Frank partially owned, Laura's father pulled her aside. "I did some research on your husband," he said quietly. Laura's stomach dropped. "Dad. I know who he is. What he was. Your mother and I both know. And..." Her father looked at where Frank stood talking with Sarah, making her laugh at something. "And I see a man who loves my daughter. Who looks at her like she's the most important thing in his world. Who's worked hard to build something legitimate. Is his past complicated? Yes. But he's here now, making her happy. That's what matters to me." Laura hugged her father. "Thank you. For understanding. Just promise me you'll be careful. His world might be changing, but it's still not entirely safe. I promise." "But Dad, I'm not fragile. I can handle it." "I know you can. That's why I'm not more worried." The party continued late into the night. Laura and Frank danced, celebrated, laughed with the people who'd supported them. When it was finally over, they went back to the penthouse, their home now, officially, and collapsed on the couch. "We did it," Laura said. "We're actually married. Best decision I ever made. After getting my car parked in that Uber zone." Laura laughed. "You'll never let me forget that, will you?" "Never. It's our origin story. How we became Mr. and Mrs. Frank Costello. Though you don't have to take my name if you don't want to." "I want to. Laura Costello. It sounds right." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city below. Their city now. Full of possibility and promise. "What happens next?" Laura asked. "What do you mean?" "I mean we've done the big romantic gestures. The proposal. The wedding. What comes next in our story?" Frank pulled her closer. "Life. Real life. Building the business. Maybe starting that bookstore cafe you've been dreaming about. Maybe kids someday. Maybe just us, figuring it out as we go." "That sounds perfect." Yeah. Good. Because I have about 1,000 plans, and they all involve you." Laura turned to kiss him. "Tell me one." "Well, I bought a house." "Surprise." Laura pulled back. "You what?" "I bought us a house. With a yard and normal neighbors and a kitchen big enough for Sunday pancakes. It needs some work, but I thought we could fix it up together. Make it ours." "Frank Costello, you're full of surprises. I'm trying to keep you interested." Mission accomplished. They talked late into the night about the house, about their plans, about the future they were building. When they finally went to bed, Laura felt a contentment she'd never experienced before. This was her life now. Complicated and beautiful and absolutely worth every risk. A year later, Laura stood in the grand opening of her bookstore cafe. Pages and lattes, she'd called it. It was everything she'd dreamed. Shelves full of books. Cozy reading nooks. A cafe counter where people could get coffee and pastries while they browsed. It was warm and welcoming, the kind of place where people wanted to linger. Frank had helped with everything. Funding, real estate connections, design consultations. But he'd let Laura lead. Let it be her vision, her achievement. He stood off to the side during the opening, watching her greet customers and glow with pride. Mrs. Chen had come, delighted that Laura had finally pursued her dream. Sarah was there with their parents. Friends from both Laura's old life and new. Even some of Frank's business associates showed up, curious about this project that had consumed so much of his attention. "It's wonderful," one of them told Frank. "Your wife has excellent taste." "She has excellent everything," Frank replied. As the crowd thinned and evening set in, Frank found Laura arranging books on a display table. "Hey, boss. Need any help?" "Just enjoying the moment." "Can you believe this is real?" "I can. You worked hard for this. You deserve it." Laura set down the books and turned to him. "We worked hard. You were part of this too. I just provided resources. This was all you. It was us. Everything is us now. That's the point." Frank pulled her close. "I love you, Laura Costello." "I love you too, Frank Costello. Thank you for locking the doors that night. Thank you for not running away screaming. Where would have been the fun in that?" They stood together in Laura's bookstore café, surrounded by books and possibility. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, two people who'd found each other by accident held each other on purpose. Building a life neither could have imagined. Creating something beautiful from the most unlikely beginning. It wasn't perfect. Frank still had difficult days, shadows from his past that wouldn't completely disappear. Laura still sometimes wondered if she'd made the right choice, if she was strong enough for this life. But they'd chosen each other. And that choice, renewed every day, made everything else manageable. Their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messier, more complicated, more real. But it was theirs. Built on trust and partnership and love that started the moment Laura got in the wrong car on Christmas Eve. And she'd do it all again in a heartbeat. If you've made it this far, thank you for taking this journey with Frank and Laura. Their story proves that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected moments. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you thought, and subscribe for more stories that'll keep you hooked from start to finish. Because everyone deserves a love story worth getting in the wrong car for. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next.